Hello, I'm Michael Burgess. I'm a representative from the state of Texas to the United States House of Representatives. I represent the 26th district. I'm also a physician. Well, the question is about patients with pre-existing conditions and have they benefited from the ACA law? And that's actually a two-part question. And let me just back up a little bit and tell you that I'm okay with a pre-existing provision of some sort. I think it would have been better left to the states, and if the federal government had wanted to participate, it would have done better to help those states that have their own risk pool or reinsurance program or some other innovative program to help people who have a hard time obtaining insurance. But honestly, to create an entirely new federal agency with new employees, new computers, new staplers and paper clips, this was entirely unnecessary. And then what has happened? Well, since January or February of this year, 2013, patients who wanted into the federal pre-existing program, remember, you had to be uninsured for 6 months in order to get in. So those people who were kind of biding their time trying to age into the federal pre-existing pool, they were told February 1st that, sorry, we're closed. We have no money to take in additional people. Well, when does the full fettle of Obamacare kick in? Not for another 11 months. So some people with pre-existing conditions, in fact, now have been harmed by the Affordable Care Act. They would have been better served to have gone to their state risk pools or their state reinsurance program or even attempted to get on a state Medicaid program. Now they're kind of caught in between in no man's land, and as a consequence, they're facing some pretty dire circumstances. All of this leads to the concept of if when the federal hub is supposed to be there, if when people are supposed to be able to sign up for the exchanges but they can't, what happens next? You may hear words like descoping. You may hear things like, we're going to try to narrow the focus of the Affordable Care Act in order to be able to take care of a narrower population than what we originally said. And I think you see on the pre-existing pool, I think that's exactly what you see happening. There was another program called the SHOP Exchange where small business health plans were supposed to be available for small businesses in a competitive marketplace, and earlier this year they said, well, we don't think we can get that done, so we're going to delay that for a year. So now the SHOP exchanges don't happen until 2015. So these are real problems that the Affordable Care Act is having on the implementation side, and I got to believe that it may get a little bit more significant before we actually get to January of 2014. Well, the question is on how much insurance premiums have increased since the enactment of the Affordable Care Act. There's no question, and while there's different ranges in different states, there's no question the overall effect has been an increase in premiums, probably by just about the amount that the president promised that premiums would decrease. In other words, he said premiums would go down by $2,500 if we would just do his Affordable Care Act 3 years ago. But now, 3 years later, when we're on the verge of the literal eve of people being able to lay down in the Elysian fields of Obamacare, they're finding the premiums are about double what in other words, their premiums have gone up $2,500 as opposed to going down $2,500. In fact, the Energy and Commerce Committee just within the last couple of weeks completed a large study on this. It's available on the Energy and Commerce House website, and people can go to that and check out what has happened in their individual state. In Texas, in the individual market, in the small group market, there are substantial premium increases that have occurred. In the large group market, it's about 25%, not as much as in the individual and small group market, but still, people were promised a reduction in premiums, and what they're seeing is exactly the opposite. And here's an extremely important point. Remember when the Affordable Care Act was sold to the American people? Many of the arguments that were used to push the Affordable Care Act were things like pre-existing conditions, things like people who just simply could not get insurance at any price. These were problems that existed where? In the small group market, in the individual market. You almost never hear of someone with a problem obtaining insurance because of a pre-existing condition in the large group market, in the large multi-state markets that are governed by ERISA regulations. They're open to enrollment periods, so I'm not going to say it's never a problem, but it's a rare problem in the large group market. Pre-existing conditions exist in the small group market, and I'm not sure that we have fixed that problem for people. And oh, by the way, we did cause their premiums to go up. Just as an example, when the Affordable Care Act was being sold to the country 3 years ago, we were told by the president, by Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House at the time, that there were 8 to 12 to 15 million people out there with pre-existing conditions who just simply could not get insurance because it wasn't available to them. Well, in fact, that number turned out to be much smaller. I know this because I was concerned if the Supreme Court had voided the Affordable Care Act, what was going to happen to those people who were in the federal pre-existing pool. In June of last year, there were 65,000 people in the federal pre-existing pool, a far cry less than the 8 to 12 to 15 million that the president and Speaker Pelosi said we're going to have to seek refuge in this federal pre-existing pool. The fact of the matter is, pre-existing conditions are a problem, but they're a problem for people in the small group market and the individual market. And we probably made things worse for them with the Affordable Care Act. But here's the deal. It was a problem that was fixable in March of 2010, and it wouldn't have required spending $1 trillion, and it wouldn't have required disrupting the entire employer-based system, which now people see as very much at risk. Well, the question is on the ACA law going in the